Some objects from history do not feel like they should exist. Not because they are magical, not because they prove some lost fantasy civilization, but because they reveal something much more interesting. The past was more connected, more symbolic, more technical, and more difficult to understand than we often imagine. Some objects survived by accident. Some were buried with power. Some were preserved in impossible conditions. And some still refuse to explain themselves, even after decades of study. A sword can reveal trade networks. A wooden idol can challenge what we think prehistoric people were capable of. A clay disc can preserve symbols we still cannot fully read. A helmet can turn metal into political theater. And a mysterious book can remind us that not every historical puzzle has been solved. Welcome to Facts and History 87. These are the top 5 historical objects that should not feel real. Number 5. The Ulfberht Swords. At number 5, the Ulfberht Swords. At first, they look like the kind of weapon you would expect from a legend. Viking-age swords with long blades, sharp profiles, and an inscription often written as Ulfberht plus. But the reason they matter is not that they were magical weapons. The real story is much more interesting. Some Ulfberht swords were made from unusually pure steel for their time. That raises a serious historical question. How did this level of material quality reach Northern Europe during the Viking Age? The answer is not simple. It may involve long-distance trade, specialist craftsmanship, imported materials, and networks stretching far beyond Scandinavia. These swords suggest that the Viking world was not isolated. It was connected to wider routes of exchange, prestige, and technical knowledge. The mystery is not that Vikings had impossible technology. The mystery is how far the material, knowledge, and status network behind these swords may have reached. And the inscription adds another layer. Because the name became associated with quality, some blades may have been imitations. In that sense, the Ulfberht swords were not only weapons, they were also early examples of branding, prestige, and possibly even counterfeit luxury. That is what makes them so modern-feeling. A sword with a recognizable name, a product associated with elite status, a design copied because people wanted the power of the label. The Ulfberht swords force us to rethink the Viking Age, not as a simple world of raiders and isolated warriors, but as a world of trade, symbols, craftsmanship, and reputation. A Viking sword that feels like a luxury brand sounds almost too strange to be real. But these objects exist. Number 4. The Shigir Idol. At number 4, the Shigir Idol. This object looks like something from a lost world. It is a tall wooden figure, carved with faces, geometric markings, and repeated symbolic patterns. It was found in the Ural region of Russia in the late 19th century, preserved in a peat bog. And that preservation is one of the reasons it is so extraordinary. Wood normally disappears. It rots. It breaks down. It vanishes from the archaeological record. That means a huge part of ancient human culture may simply be missing from history because it was made from materials that did not survive. The Shigir Idol is important because it escaped that fate, and its age is what makes it almost unbelievable. It is thousands of years older than Stonehenge and the pyramids of Egypt. This was not a simple object made by people with no symbolic world. It was planned, carved, marked, and shaped with intention. The exact meaning of its symbols is still debated, but the object itself makes one thing clear. Prehistoric people were not culturally empty. They had ideas. They had symbols. They had visual language. They created objects that carried meaning far beyond basic survival. That is why the Shigir Idol matters. It challenges the old, lazy idea that hunter-gatherer societies were somehow simple or primitive in their thinking. The survival of the idol gives us a rare glimpse into a wooden world that is mostly gone. There may once have been many objects like it: carved figures, wooden markers, ritual objects, symbolic structures, but because they were made of wood, almost all of them disappeared. So the Shigir Idol may not be strange because it was unique. It may be strange because it survived. A giant wooden idol older than famous ancient monuments sounds like something from fiction. But it is real. Number 3. The Phaistos Disc. At number 3, The Phaistos Disc. This small clay object was discovered on Crete in 1908 at the Minoan Palace site of Phaistos. At first glance, it looks beautiful. Then it starts to feel impossible. Both sides are covered with symbols arranged in a spiral. There are human figures, animals, tools, plants, and other signs pressed into the clay. And the central problem is still unresolved. Nobody has conclusively decoded it. The symbols appear to have been impressed or stamped into the clay rather than simply written by hand. That does not make it printing in the modern sense, and it should not be treated as some impossible technological miracle. But it does make the object feel strangely ahead of its time. It looks organized, it looks deliberate, it looks like a message, and yet the key is missing. Was it religious, administrative, a hymn, a calendar, a ritual text, a game, a one-off object with no wider writing system behind it? Scholars have proposed many explanations, but no interpretation has been universally accepted. That is what makes the Phaistos Disc so powerful. It reminds us that archaeology does not always give clean answers. Sometimes we can find the object, photograph it, preserve it, compare it, and still not fully understand what it is saying. Modern audiences often expect the past to become clearer the more we study it. But objects like the Phaistos Disc show the opposite can happen. The more closely you look, the more the mystery sharpens. And there is another important point. The object is not strange because we should jump to fantasy explanations. It is strange because real human communication can be lost. A script can disappear. A local tradition can vanish. A system of meaning can survive only as a silent object behind glass. The Phaistos Disc does not need to be exaggerated. A real Bronze Age disc covered in symbols we still cannot fully read is already strange enough. Number 2. The Sutton Hoo Helmet. At number 2, the Sutton Hoo Helmet. This helmet looks like it belongs in myth. A face mask, decorated panels, animal motifs, a design that transforms the wearer into something more than an ordinary person. But it was not invented for a fantasy film. It was found in a real Anglo-Saxon ship burial in England. The Sutton Hoo burial, discovered in 1939, became one of the most important archaeological finds in British history. It contained weapons, treasures, metalwork, and evidence of extraordinary elite status. But the helmet became the icon. When it was found, it was broken into many pieces. It had to be carefully reconstructed. The result is one of the most recognizable objects from early medieval Europe. And the deeper story is not just about armor. The Sutton Hoo helmet was political messaging in metal. It protected the head, yes, but it also projected identity, authority, kingship, and power. The face mask did not simply hide the wearer. It transformed him. To see someone wearing a helmet like this would not just be to see a warrior. It would be to see status made visible. This is why Sutton Hoo helped change how people thought about the so-called Dark Ages. That phrase can make the period sound crude, empty, or backward. But the helmet tells a different story. Its craftsmanship is complex. Its imagery is deliberate. Its burial context is rich. Its cultural connections are wide. The object proves that early medieval England was not a blank space between Rome and later kingdoms. It was a world of power, symbolism, wealth, and artistic sophistication. That is why the helmet feels unreal. Not because it is impossible, but because it looks like something from legend, while also being a serious political object from a real burial. A helmet from a buried ship that turns a person into a symbol of power sounds like fiction, but it is real. Before number 1, like this video and subscribe to Facts and History 87. It helps the video reach more people, so we can keep making new history videos. Number 1. The Voynich Manuscript. At number 1, the Voynich Manuscript. This is one of the most mysterious books in the world. It is filled with strange writing, botanical drawings, circular diagrams, bathing figures, astronomical-looking charts, and pages that seem to belong to a system of knowledge we cannot enter. But the strangest thing about the Voynich Manuscript is not simply that we cannot read it. The strangest thing is that it looks like it wants to be read. The text has structure. It has repeated patterns. It has sections. It looks organized. It looks purposeful. And yet nobody has convincingly decoded it. For more than a century, scholars, linguists, historians, cryptographers, codebreakers, and amateurs have tried to understand what the manuscript is. Some have suggested it could be a real language written in an unknown script. Others have argued it may be a cipher. Some think it could be meaningless. Others see it as a medical, herbal, astronomical, or scientific text whose system of meaning has been lost. The problem is that every confident answer runs into difficulty. The plants do not clearly match known botanical species. The diagrams are difficult to interpret. The script does not fit neatly into familiar categories. The illustrations feel systematic, but also strange. That is why the manuscript has become legendary. It is not just an unreadable book. It is a locked door. And unlike many mysteries, this one has not disappeared under modern analysis. Better images, more attention, and more expertise have not produced a final answer that everyone accepts. That is important, because it challenges a very modern belief that enough data, enough technology, and enough intelligence can solve everything. The Voynich Manuscript resists that confidence. It reminds us that history is not only made of answers. Sometimes history survives as a question. A book full of unknown writing, impossible-looking plants, and diagrams nobody fully understands sounds like something invented for a mystery novel. But the manuscript is real. These objects matter because they break simple ideas about the past. The Ulfberht swords show that the Viking Age was connected to wider worlds of trade, prestige, and technical knowledge. The Shigir Idol shows that prehistoric symbolic culture may have been far richer than the surviving evidence usually allows us to see. The Phaistos Disc shows that real systems of meaning can vanish so completely that even a surviving object remains silent. The Sutton Hoo Helmet shows that the so-called Dark Ages were not dark in the way many people imagine. And the Voynich Manuscript shows that even modern analysis cannot unlock every historical mystery. That is why these objects feel unreal. Not because they prove fantasy, but because they prove that real history is stranger, deeper, and more difficult than the simple version we inherit. The past was not primitive. It was not empty. It was not easy to understand. It was human. Creative, symbolic, ambitious, technical, political, and sometimes completely unreadable. Which object sounds the most unbelievable to you? Like, subscribe, and help us share more real history.